Hello, my name is Ashley Williams, and I am delighted to be with you today to talk to you about STEM. I am super passionate about STEM and about encouraging young girls and young women like you to pursue STEM careers. So thank you for spending this time with me. I'm especially excited because I was a Girl Scout when I was a kid as well. I loved my time in Girl Scouts, and I learned some very valuable skills that I use to this day. I am recording this in advance from Southern California, but I wish I could be there with you in person. So this morning, I'm going to tell you my story, how I got into STEM, and how I really grew to understand myself through that journey. Now, how many of you grew up knowing what you want to be? Do you have any ideas? Or maybe you have a favorite subject in school. Growing up, I loved math and science, but I also really loved English and history and the arts. Do any of you like to take things apart? Maybe you like to tinker or figure out how things work? Well, if I knew you when I was growing up, I would have thought, wow, she is destined to be an engineer. That wasn't me. I don't think I even knew what an engineer was until I was about 13 years old. Around that time, I became super fascinated by space, and I dreamed of working for NASA. But I didn't think I was smart enough to be an engineer. One day, my high school calculus teacher pulled me aside and he told me that I was really good at math. Up to that point, it hadn't really occurred to me. I didn't think I was good at it. But that one comment from an observant and caring teacher set me on the path that I'm on today. So, throughout school, I worked very hard. I loved school. I loved having homework because I just always enjoyed learning. I was lucky in that I was placed into some of the advanced math classes early in middle school, and I then continued on that path. So when I went to college, I went to the University of Colorado at Boulder, and I decided to give aerospace engineering a shot. I didn't know what to expect, and I very much gave myself the space to be okay with it not working out, that maybe that was not for me. But I worked really hard, and I surprised myself. I performed well, especially in one of the more advanced math classes, Calculus 3. Along the way, again, a professor pulled me aside and told me I was good at math. And she encouraged me to add another major, to double major in applied mathematics. I followed her advice and continued to really love what I was doing. Later, she encouraged me to pursue a PhD, which is an advanced form of study, which is why now I get to be called Dr. Ashley Williams. And so I did follow her advice. So after CU, I went to Caltech for grad school. I first earned a master's degree in aerospace engineering and then a PhD in a field called control and dynamical systems. That might sound very mysterious. It sounds mysterious even to my parents. What it means is basically just applied math, understanding how things work in the physical world and then how you might manipulate them and control them. And you know what's cool? While I was in grad school, I got to work at NASA, at JPL, in fact, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, which is the part of NASA that does the Mars rovers. I did 2 internships there, and then throughout my PhD work, I collaborated with JPL engineers on my thesis work. So let's talk about NASA. How many of you follow NASA's projects? Did you follow the news when the latest rover, Perseverance, landed on Mars? I still remember the way I felt back in 2004, well before most of you were born, when the Spirit and Opportunity rovers landed on Mars. I remember watching the way the control room that was observing the landing, the emotion of those engineers, and I thought that was just so inspiring, and I really wanted to do that one day, and that really kept me going in studying engineering. Have you heard of any upcoming NASA missions? Maybe a one that's coming very soon. Have you heard of that one? What I'm thinking of is called the James Webb Space Telescope, or JWST is its acronym. This is an infrared telescope that's set to launch in December. The purpose of its mission is to study the formation of early galaxies, planets, and stars. Can you name any other famous NASA telescopes that have studied the universe? Anybody? If you said the Hubble telescope, you are right. JWST is meant to extend and complement what scientists have learned from Hubble. Now, Hubble orbits the Earth and looks out into space. What really interests me about JWST is its orbit. So here, this picture from NASA on the left shows part of the spacecraft. And you can see the people in the picture just to get a sense of how big this is. Now, this will launch in December, and it will spend 30 days traveling 1 million miles away from Earth to what's called L2. It's a Lagrange point. And that's what this picture shows. This picture on the right-hand side shows the sun, and then the Earth, and then two Lagrange points, L1 and L2. And JWST is going to orbit L2. Now, I want to tell you a little bit more about that in a second, but first, let's think about that 1 million miles. Do you know what the circumference of the Earth is? It's nearly 25,000 miles. That means JWST will travel a distance roughly equal to traveling around the Earth at the equator 40 times. Now, why is it going so far away? And it has to do with that Lagrange point. Now, hopefully you have learned maybe in your science classes or through interesting movies that the Earth orbits around the sun, and it's the sun's gravity that keeps the Earth moving in its orbit. Similarly, the moon orbits the Earth as a result of the Earth's gravity. Now, by studying the math and the dynamics of objects like the sun and the Earth, a mathematician named Lagrange in the 18th century discovered a set of equilibrium points where the gravity of the Earth and the sun balance so that an object placed there is dynamically balanced and it would, in theory, stay there in that same relative position between the Earth and the sun. So I want you to imagine you have the sun here and the Earth here, and then the Lagrange point is here. So a spacecraft in that spot will maintain its relative position. As the Earth moves, it will stay in that spot where the Earth is between it and the sun. What's happening dynamically, you can kind of think about a ball that is at the bottom of a hill where it's just sort of balanced there, or maybe a ball that's at the top of the hill and it isn't moving either direction. That's kind of what's happening here. The forces all balance to keep it in place. And so JWST is headed to L2 because of its infrared technology that requires it to be protected from light and heat. And so this fixed position relative to the sun and the Earth allows its very large sunshade to provide that needed protection. So let's watch a video of the orbit here. And this is showing how the Earth is orbiting the sun, and then you can see that the spacecraft is orbiting L2, which stays in line with the Earth and the sun. Now, there's another reason that I'm telling you about JWST and why I'm so excited about it. It is because I studied Lagrange points for my PhD at Caltech. I worked on the optimization of spacecraft trajectories, taking advantage of the same math and physics as JWST. My work focused on the idea of an interplanetary superhighway made up of tubes or slides that connect the orbits around Lagrange points through a series of three-body systems. So if we think about the sun and the Earth and JWST, that's one three-body system. But you can think of other three-body systems in the solar system, and we can look for where these tubes intersect. So ultimately, I worked on a trajectory from the Earth to the moon using these ideas. And so if a spacecraft is placed at the entrance to one of these slides, it could travel from the Earth to the moon using very little fuel. So on the lower part of this slide are some graphics that I created in grad school demonstrating this work. Okay, so what did I do after school? First, I will make the comment, I went from kindergarten through senior year of high school, and then I went to college and graduate school. That combined was 9 years. I went to school for 9 years after high school. That should tell you something about how much I love school and how much I love learning. But after I finished my PhD, I started my career at a place called the Aerospace Corporation. And I was an analyst in the control analysis department. Let me move this so you can see it a little better. And I was developing simulations of satellite control systems. The Aerospace Corporation is a nonprofit that operates what's called a federally funded research and development center for the government. They work closely with the Air Force and other government agencies to provide technical guidance to ensure the success of their missions and their projects. One example, how many of you know what GPS is? Maybe you've used that in the car, going somewhere with your parents for directions. So the GPS constellation was built and is maintained by the US Air Force, and the Aerospace Corporation helps with that to make sure that it works properly. Over time, I worked from being just purely an analyst into management, and no matter what role I was in, I continued to focus on modeling, simulation, and analysis of space systems. So to really understand how a satellite would work and perform in orbit. I worked there for 7.5 years, and I fully intended to spend my entire career there. I worked with some really amazing people who mentored me and they challenged me, and they helped me to become a better engineer. And over time, I built up confidence in my ability to tackle hard problems. But then life threw a bit of a curveball, and my husband was recruited by a company in the Bay Area. At the time, we would be in Los Angeles. So together, we decided to make a big pivot and to totally switch industries, moving from the aerospace and defense industry into the tech industry, and make that move up to the Bay Area. Now, I spent several months job searching until I found an amazing role at a company I never imagined myself working at. Now, how many of you or your parents own an iPad or an iPhone? Well, now I work for the company that makes those products, Apple. It was during the interview process, as I was talking to different companies and different recruiters, that I really had to define myself and my skills to understand, what do I offer as an engineer? And at first it was really tricky to get interviewers to see what I could do, how my aerospace engineering skills could translate to a totally different industry or application. I had to really understand who I was, the value I bring, what I'm good at, and also what I wanted, what was important to me. I interviewed at both startups and big companies for a lot of different roles, but it was the one at Apple that felt right. I've now been in that job for 2.5 years. I work on an R&D project. I manage a small team of analysts, data scientists, and software developers. And we build simulation tools and we perform analysis to assess and guide the technology development process for this new project. I was joking with a colleague the other day about how exhilarating the work is. And he pointed out that I'm the one who says whether what we're doing is going to work. It's a lot of pressure, but it's also really amazing and gratifying for my work to have influence and impact. Overall, this job is incredible, and I feel so lucky to do it. But it's also hard. Sometimes it's stressful, and there can be a lot of pressure. Do you ever feel like you're never going to finish all your homework or all of your chores? Feel like you won't be ready for a big test? I still feel like that. And it is only because I know myself and I trust the skills I've built up all the way from my time in Girl Scouts through college and in my career that I'm able to stand up to that pressure and to really do my job. Now, work is a big part of my life, but I once had a really great mentor who asked me, what do you want out of life and how does your career fit into that? So I'm going to tell you about what's important to me. First, I want to spend quality time with my family, my pets, and my friends. I really want to highlight the pets here. I am obsessed with my pets. Here we have my cat Chaos and then my two dogs, Lainey and Georgie. In fact, Georgie is sitting right here. I'm going to bring them over and say hi. Come here, Georgie. This is Georgie. Say hello. I adopted Georgie about a year ago. He's a sweet little guy. Okay, so aside from my pets, I also love to travel. And one of the things that I wanted in my life was financial security. And I'm not afraid to say that I'm really proud that my career has provided that. That engineering really pays a good salary right out of college. And so it has provided that security and that freedom and that opportunity. Also, I just want to live a joyful life. I want to spend my days doing work that is meaningful to me and to others. And so as I figured out who I am, I also think a lot about what I want out of a job. Now, this is my favorite interview question to ask, and I think it reveals a lot. For me, I want to learn and be challenged. I never want to stop learning. I want to do something that matters, that makes a difference in the world and in people's lives. And I also want to work with passionate, generous, and collaborative people. So these three core values are a guiding light for me in every decision that I make for my career and for my life. So now, do any of you know what you want to be when you grow up? It's totally okay if you don't. I mean, I really didn't know for a long time. And honestly, my parents are still surprised that this is what I do for a living. So as you think about it, think about what you want your day to look like. When you think about what subjects you really want to focus on in school, do you like working at a computer? Do you like to write code? Do you want to learn to write code? Do you like working with yourself, like alone, or do you like to collaborate with others? For me, my job is essentially solving puzzles all day, puzzles that include math and programming. It's super fun and it's super challenging. So now I want you to think about another series of questions. What makes you special? What are you good at? Who do you want to be? Are there things that you want to improve and be better at? What do you want to change? What do you want to learn? And then also, how do you want to be seen? We don't always see ourselves very clearly. And so if you had a friend describe you to someone else, what would you want them to say? And so when I think about myself, there are three major words I would use to describe myself. And those are mentor, performer, and analyst. And I'll explain each one. Now for mentor, throughout my life and career, there are people who've had an incredible impact on me and in shaping who I am today. These are people who believed in me and encouraged me. They challenge me. They uplift me when I'm struggling, and then they celebrate me when I'm thriving. When I think about it, some of my first mentors were my Girl Scout leaders. It was through Girl Scouts that I first learned to really set goals. Back when I was a Girl Scout, I remember there was a book that listed all these activities you could complete to earn patches. And I loved earning patches. I remember sitting on the floor of my room, flipping through that book and planning out how I could earn more and more patches for my vest. It really helped me to learn how to be goal-oriented, how to work through something all the way to completion. So mentoring has been so meaningful to me, and I strive to do the same for others. There are different ways that this manifests in my life. The first is in teaching. I taught part-time for 6 years at both Cal State Long Beach at first, and then at the University of Southern California, teaching courses in orbital mechanics and then in MATLAB programming. I did this because I love working with students, and sharing my perspective as someone in the industry has always been really fun for me. Now, teachers really shape the future. How many of you have a favorite teacher? What teachers do is so important, impacting the future of so many young women and girls, and changing not just their lives, but changing what STEM is going to look like. I sit in so many meetings in which I am the only woman. I'm really excited for the day when that's not the case, for when it is no longer remarkable to be a woman in STEM. So the next part is STEM outreach. It's hard to imagine being something you can't see. Role models are super important. And so that's part of what I do, what I'm doing today. I want to share the joy and the possibility of STEM careers with the next generation, to encourage and inspire so that hopefully you'll give it a try. You'll sign up for that advanced math class or the robotics team or a programming class. So you can prove to yourself that you can do it too. That top photo is from a STEM event that I participate in every year at a high school in Long Beach. And the lower picture is from a program I led at the Aerospace Corporation geared towards our interns. Now, over time, I worked hard to become a manager, and I love it. I really enjoy developing the careers of my employees and in shaping the culture of our team. I work hard to support my colleagues and to help them succeed. Also, I mentor earlier career employees who don't report to me. Now, when I think about my own success, I picture myself as standing on the shoulders of giants, those who came before me and who have shared 40 years of experience so that I could start my career with nuggets of knowledge that it took them a lifetime to acquire. Some people succeed in life by stomping on others and clawing their way to the top. That's not me. I prefer to succeed by supporting and championing others. It's so much more joyful to succeed together than alone. And I find that when I support others, they support me right back. Now, my next word is performer. My mother was a high school theater teacher, and she instilled in me a love for theater and performance, and I grew up on the stage. Now, I remember some of my earliest performances were during Girl Scout retreats. Performances we wrote and directed ourselves and then performed for our moms and our Girl Scout troop leaders. It was super fun. Later, I have a super strong memory of the overwhelming joy I felt the first time I performed in a high school musical, and I heard the audience erupt in applause at the end of the opening dance number. Now, while I was very involved in theater and choir throughout high school, one day I was at rehearsal for a play, and I realized that I was really eager to get off the stage and back to my math homework. That was a real light bulb moment for me, and a big reason I pursued engineering as a career. I realized that day that when I do math, the rest of the world just sort of fades away. I feel at peace, and time just flies by. But I still needed performance to be a part of my life. So I found a way to view technical presentations as a performance. Now, this may surprise you, but get ready. Engineers spend a lot of time putting together and giving technical presentations. So when I'm talking about complex mathematical equations and abstract concepts, I tell a story. I write a script and I perform it. While that doesn't work for everybody, it definitely works for me. And I feel that same joy I got performing before that musical theater audience when I share technical information with my colleagues and my bosses. I'll share a particular story. When I was at the Aerospace Corporation, I had the opportunity to present to the board about a technical issue that was 40 years in the making, that had started well before I was born. I've never been so nervous in my life. I remember walking into the room and my heart was pounding so hard, I was convinced that everyone could see it. But I got up there and I told the story. And now this board included some incredibly accomplished people. And when I finished, they applauded. And it reminded me of that first time I performed in that high school musical. I even got a high five from a former ambassador and a thumbs up from a man who was an astronaut and a retired 4-star general. Later, I learned that they don't applaud, that's only happened 2 or 3 times in the history of the company. So now engineering is hard, and it is very important to communicate the nuance of technical problems. What is happening and why, and what is the impact? And to do that successfully, the information has to be accessible and interesting and engaging so that people can understand it. And so because I think about all of those things, and because I think about it as performance, presenting is probably my greatest strength as an engineer. And it grew out of my love of theater as a kid. So what can you do now to develop those skills that you could use in any career? You can take a theater class or an improv class, dance or music, anything that gets you performing in front of other people and to get comfortable talking in front of others. It's really an important skill. And then I'll just point out this picture on the right. That's me presenting some of my graduate work back at Caltech. Okay, so my final word is analyst. This is fundamentally who I am as a professional. I can look at complex data and equations and extract meaning and insight. I'm really good at math. I'm creative. I look for ways to display information in a way that is beautiful and engaging and that helps people to understand. And because of that, I make really awesome plots and really cool animations. I wish I could show some of them to you, but I can't. I can take big problems and break them into small pieces that can actually be solved. And I can explain complex technical information in a way that is understandable and that enables people to make decisions and to move forward on a project. The best compliment I ever got from my boss was that he didn't hire me because of my specific knowledge or experience. He hired me because I could think. And the value there is that I can solve problems I haven't seen before. And I trust that I can think it through and I can figure it out. So one of the things I want you to remember in school, whether you're in kindergarten or you're in middle school, that right now you are learning to think. You are learning how to problem solve. So while some of the specific facts and skills, those are all important, the fundamentals are that you're learning to think. All right, so from all of this today, who do you want to be? Maybe do you want to be an engineer one day? Maybe a scientist? I think you can do it. And I really hope that you will pursue that if that's the right thing for you.